So who keeps our taxpayer money in check? Well, the PAC and PAAC help watch over the country's budget. And one might sound like it just have an extra A, but they're way different. Here's how. The PAAC and PAC are two committees that watch the money. The Public Accounts Committee reviews government projects after them close. They do a post-audit check to see what problems arose with the costs and call officials to explain decisions that cause budget mismanagement. And then they recommend corrective action, so the problem will happen from when, not happen again. But what about the money we are spending right now, the PAAC? That's how Public Administration and Appropriations Committee pretty much means your money will protect as it happen, we check. While projects go on, things are accurate. As government spend the nation's budget, PAAC reviews it. They examine proposals and summon officials to find problems before them don't use it. So the PAC and PAAC are two parliamentary committees that watch over the country's wallet to protect the budget and keep it in check. And you can get involved. Just visit jampja.org.
Speeding kills. Obey the speed limit. A message from the Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport and Mining.
No more guarantors for student loan. Your government cares about your education, and we don't want you to ever have to worry about going to university. The Students' Loan Bureau has a loan for you, so you can focus on your future.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side of the back. You fit check out the servings, just do the maths. Not taking too much, finger below the facts. Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side of the back. Take note of the sodium, the sugars and the fats. 5% or less in the on the right track. You fit zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side of the back. Vitamins, minerals and vitamin 2, 20% and more. That good for you. You fit zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. You fit zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. You fit zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. Less sugar, less salt intake and less fat. You fit zoom in.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Jamaica Moves, the Heart Foundation of Jamaica, the National Health Fund, and Japan.
Me, I gotta show them my way of justice.
I'm abused.
I need legal advice. I don't deserve this.
The truth of the matter is, justice there for all of we. The Ministry of Justice has trained more than 5,600 persons in restorative justice practices. More than 200,000 victims have been supported by the victim services. Legal aid has reached thousands island-wide. Make we talk it out, not fight it out. Call 888 Justice today. Motorists, as Minister of Justice, I appeal to you. Obey the road code. Pay your ticket on time. And only go to court if the ticket is being contested. Close to 80% of matters coming to the parish courts are for traffic breaches. Let's work together to make our roads safe and ease the burden on our courts.
Each year, the Jamaican Parliament approves billions in tax dollars to buy goods and services for Jamaicans. Awarding contracts to private companies to provide public goods and services is called public procurement, and it is a major hotspot for corruption. Can citizens spot the red flags in public procurement and help the government protect our taxes? Yes, they can, and here are 6 to watch for. Direct contracting. When contracts are frequently awarded to one supplier without other companies competing to offer a better price and quality, we usually end up paying more and getting less. Contract splintering. Big projects need big money and higher level approvals. But if the contract is cut up into smaller ones, it won't need external approval from offices like the Public Procurement Commission or Cabinet. This makes it easier for contracts to avoid additional scrutiny. Timing of advertisements. Contracts advertised during distracting periods like the holidays can result in less competition and a really strong advantage for the favored company. Like Christmas time, work slows down and companies are less attentive to business opportunities. Emergency contracting. Claiming emergencies allows officials to legally bypass normal procurement rules, making it easier to award contracts to favored companies. Contract timing. Contracts awarded just before or after election can be payback for campaign support and not based on what Jamaicans really need. Collusion. And what if penalties are not enforced when work is poorly done? This could be a contractor and public official working together for private benefit. And if it is, this is collusion. These flags do not prove corruption, but they trigger questions that citizens must ask. So mind your business, Jamaica. Visit the JAMP Procurement Tracker to monitor government contracts. If you spot these flags, use our ATI tool to ask questions and demand accountability.
This afternoon, as it relates to our nation's children, we ask for your presence to be made manifest and that your Holy Spirit will guide our discussions and any decisions that may be made. We ask for you to be with the presenters today and with all members and everyone in the chambers. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Right? Apologies for absence. We have apologies from Miss Zulika Jess and also one or two other apologies, but they may well turn up. The possibility, why I say they may join us, there are two members that are supposed to join us virtually, but there are some misunderstanding as to if and when they will join us. And Ms. Tova Hamilton was here, but she's hoping to join us shortly. So also Minister Dalrymple Filbert and Miss Juliet Flynn, they're here to will join us soon. We were not able to confirm with the children's advocate to be here today, but we are hoping, she has indicated she and her team will come at a later date. So we have one presentation today from here, the Children's Cry, but we also have a mentor here with us who has mentored 10, 8 successfully, 1 continuing, and 1 was returned without completion. So that mentor, as I indicated, we are going to hear from a few mentors, so members will be able to find out from the mentor. We're not going to call her name or the parish she was in, just for protect the identity of the children that were mentored. So that to the extent that you can have some question on how the program works in terms of the mentoring, we will do that immediately afterwards. Now, the minutes of Tuesday the 24th is ready, but members, clearly it was only completed today. So we are going to leave the minutes of the 24th and the 26th, and maybe today, until next Wednesday, which I'm hoping members will be able to agree to next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I spoke to Minister Dixon. We're hoping to have the Ministry of Education and the CPFSA to be here. She has confirmed that both Ministry of Education and the CPFSA will be here next Wednesday, so we'll take those two, and depending on their submission, if we have 1 or 2 other mentors, because as I promised, we would like to hear from the mentors how the programs have been going. Huh? 2 o'clock. Next Wednesday is at 2 o'clock. All right? So without further ado, we are going to ask the members, that's Miss Duane and Miss Whittle or White? Whittle, Miss Whittle. Could you just introduce who is going to make the presentation, or both will? So go ahead, and we now turn over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, members of the Joint Select Committee, and of course, the chair, Mr. Delroy Chuck. Just to introduce myself, my name is Priscilla Duhaney. I am the spokesperson for Hear the Children's Cry, and also an attorney at law by profession. I have here with me Miss Desiree Whittle. She is really here for moral support. I don't know if she wants to speak, but essentially, I will be the one doing the presentation. All right, we can begin?
Yes, please. All
right, so thank you again. So to the committee, we wanted to just, well, make it very clear. Mr. Nigel Cooper, who is the director of Hear the Children's Cry, would have wanted to be a part of this, but unfortunately is overseas at the moment. But essentially, our submission here, there might be some level of, information that is more skewed specifically to the sexual issues or the consensual sex among minors. So we're really not here to discuss or to present holistically on the Child Diversion Act, because we really have a particular focus today, which is in relation to that. So I wanted to just start off by saying the Child Diversion Act, which established the National Child Diversion Program, which in essence is to deal with matters concerning children that are found in contempt of the law. The program itself was pioneered, of course, as you know, by the Ministry of Justice from the establishment of the Child Diversion Act 2018, and was introduced with the intention to divert that is implementing measures to deal with children found to have infringed the penal law without resorting to the formal judicial proceedings. In doing so, we recognize and align with international standards, including the UN Convention on Rights of a Child and the principle of having the best interests of the child as paramount. And we speak to the fact that there were 5 goals in mind when establishing this program. Now, in regards to the particular Child Diversion Act, we see sections 1, 3, and section 3, 4, and 5, which encapsulates the purpose of the Child Diversion Act. We are really not in opposition to the Child Diversion Act being amended, so to speak, in relation to the specific matter at hand. As we mentioned before, we understand that the Jamaicans for Justice have been articulating, and probably other advocates as well, in relation to the child diversion program being clogged with sexual offenses. However, in section 9 of the Act, it speaks to referral to the child diversion program. A child who is suspected to have committed, who is charged for the commission of or convicted of a diversion offense may be referred to the Child Diversion Committee for participation in the child diversion program by the court, or a diversion offense in the first schedule by a constable. The section 9, subsection 2 speaks to the child being referred to the child diversion program if the child accepts responsibility. I'm just giving an overview, so to speak, and then I go into the meat of the matter. Regrettably, some of which I'm saying is not necessarily probably on the paper that you might have. So just to make it clear. We also mentioned section 11, which is clear on the face of it that a child accepts responsibility and referred to the child diversion program. there shall be a cessation of criminal proceedings. And we also make reference to the fact that it says reasons for the provisions in the Sexual Offense Act to remain and for the child diversion program to take effect is that, one, we note that many might ask the question, why should this remain on the books in terms of consensual sex among minors? And essentially we are saying that the child diversion program was established for the purpose of dealing with children found in contempt of the law. Now, we have a responsibility from the position of the state to protect our children. And if it is that we had established the child diversion program for this particular purpose or for purposes of this nature, then we see no reason why we should reinvent the wheel to facilitate any other avenue or channel for our children. So we say that the powers of the child diversion program is that the mission is that the National Child Diversion Program, which was born out of the Act itself, provides a paradigm shift. Its core mission is to steer children who have infringed the law away from harsh formal judicial system and toward restorative measures. I believe that is pretty much understood. This isn't just a local ambition, as we would have observed and we are aware. It is a commitment to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. We are enshrining the principle that the best interest of the child must be paramount, must be of paramount consideration. We also note that this has rehabilitation purposes and goals over punishment, and that is what we believe the Child Diversion Act was established for. The program operates, as we said, on 5 strategic goals designed to reduce exposure to the formal courts. It focuses on rehabilitating our youth and holding them accountable without the lifelong stigma of a criminal record. Well, at least that is what it should do. We also state that beyond the individual, this program is a vital tool for the state. Now, it's twofold. The purpose of it is, one, unclogging our courts. So we have heard arguments primarily about it clogging up the diversion program, but the purpose of the diversion program or the act itself was to unclog the courts, take the matters out of the court so that these can be dealt with social intervention strategies being implemented. It allows the formal system to focus on more serious matters, while specialized committees manage youth cases with the care they require. The program itself has been proven based on our checks, based on our research. We have heard several mention that it has been successful, or it has been doing the work that it was designed for. It is internationally aligned. There is no need, as we have said, to reinvent the wheel or change it. We must protect the system because it doesn't just manage cases, as we have said, in terms of our children, but it saves their future. The particular matter regarding our children, as it relates to the Child Diversion Act and regards to the consensual sex among minors, we wanted to make it clear that there were mention that if it is we change the legislation or decriminalize sexual offenses, so to speak, concerning our minors for consensual sex, what it does is that it takes away from the legal authorities, the law enforcement officers, the ability to prosecute accordingly based on our reality. Because what we understand, and we have made a reference to Dr. McKay article, which he indicated, a criminologist for those who don't know, that a lot of the inner cities, the garrison communities, it's not a matter of whether they consent, but more so because of this particular, because of the legislation that is in place, it somewhat protect our children as well as allow the law enforcement officers.
You don't mind being interrupted?
No, not at all.
Or you want to complete before you?
No, it's okay. You think?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know he was asking a question. I thought.
But would you want to complete for you?
I would complete this particular statement and or the idea that I was about to make, and then I can allow the question. All right. So simply, I was just making the point that, based on the research, there are several garrison communities, based on the fact that the law enforcement officers have the specific legislation in place. They can prosecute, they can zone in on a dons that which are coercing, because what oftentimes is misunderstood is that, okay, we have a particular category that we set aside for coercion, for sexual offenses. However, what we need to understand also, the realities of our society, is that there are a lot of situations that even though it might seem consensual, it would have been based on coercion, but you cannot prove that. And so within the garrison, because you have dons, because you have influential members, the children, the young ladies that are there under the age of 16, because of fear and because of even fear for the parent, etc., they oftentimes, and this also is based on our experience as Adhere to Children's Cry, which we specialize in missing children oftentimes, a lot of the way the escape mechanism is for our children to be reported as missing because they are trying to hide from the dons who are soliciting them for sexual gratification. And so in regards to that, even though it might be deemed as consensual, then essentially if we were to remove the law, then it is going to open up the floodgates where the law enforcement cannot prosecute or hold accountable. I'm going to allow counsel or...
You wanted to ask a question, Mr. Member Buchanan.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Priscilla, you're saying a mouthful. Yes. But I'm trying to follow you. So the first question, just for clarity and for the public, are you saying that dons are now under the age of 16 as well?
Well, we're also saying that because a lot of the, not only dons, but perpetrators, predators, well, when you look at it, research would have shown that quite a number of our teen within age 17.
Well, let's put it a bit, if you don't mind, Mr.
Sure, go ahead.
Put it a bit more exact, because the recommendation from the Joint Select Committee of 2017 was that a close-in age, that is a 15 and a 19, said a close-in age. So I think your question is, are you saying dons are under 19?
19. Well, that is what I was...
I would go there, but my problem is the purpose of the child diversion, especially the aspect of the legislation that we are now speaking of, is the children who fit the criteria, which is 17 and 12, right? The consent age being 16, a closing age, the contemplation of a closing age amendment would be 17, 15, a 2-year period. But more so when you say, when you speak of coercion, in relation to child diversion, peer pressure is different from coercion because, one, you made many mentions of consent. Children cannot consent. And one of the reasons why we're here reviewing the legislation now is to kind of tighten the language to accept the difference between what rape is when there's a clear no, but participation. And so when you speak of coercion, I find it's a bit far-fetched to say that we're including children who are being children who need guidance and saying that they're doing anything other than peer pressure. So I just need clarity on that.
All right, thank you. I think you said a few things I would have wanted to make a note of. So first and foremost, I wanted to say that, well, to answer the question if children in this particular term can be dons at 17, I would say yes. 2, they can be. We have data to show that you have mostly these criminals that are doing, carrying out their enterprises, actually children at 17, 18, 19, of course, this is over the age, but you do have that. Second, I wanted to address the point of, although you might reference it as peer pressure, as I said before, this is not just from my information per se or my personal opinion. This is based on the relevant research that would have been done. Persons in this particular field, expert knowledge, have indicated on paper to say that you have 17-year-olds who are sometimes coercing individuals that if they do not do this. Now, even though we look at it from the perception of that they are minors or under the age of 18, they still have an enormous amount of influence.
So, Ms. Priscilla, I'm trying to digest this, but the purpose of child diversion, and you said it is under the best interest of the children, the child principle. I'm hearing you saying we're to treat a child as anything other than a child, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with that. I mean, even though we don't have corporal punishment, but a 17-year-old who thinks him is a big man, child diversion is to put him with mentors and persons for corrective measures. So we are identifying children who otherwise have been misguided, and the purpose of the legislation up to 17 is to correct that an intervention for correction. So I would just want to put on record and reject wholeheartedly any classification of a minor being a don, even if he thinks or she thinks that she is.
Well, it's unfortunate that you would reject it, even in spite of, while I agree with you concerning the legislative purpose, I am living in the reality of our society, that which we know, whether we want to classify that they are dons or they call themselves dons. We are not saying even though they are putting themselves in that category, there isn't a channel, the diversion program cannot assist them. We are not saying that. We are simply just identifying that this is the reality and this is something that we must address accordingly. That you must look at the legislation from a bird's eye view, look at it with the specific details that is presented to you in the country. It's not a matter of we are looking elsewhere. You have individuals at 17 that are coercing, that are part of gangs. I would assume that you would have your data concerning gangs that are in the country. What is what are the age groups that you are usually seeing?
Sorry, just allow Ms. Senator Scott wanted to.
I wanted to ask you a question based on a statement which you made, because you said that the purpose of the child diversion program was really rehabilitating youths and holding them accountable without lifelong stigma of a criminal record. You really said that we were protecting them from harsh judicial measures. I want to know how you feel about children who are having consensual sex. In other words, they are 16 and under, they do not have the capacity to consent, but they are actively engaged in sexual activity. And I wanted to know if you put that in the same category as the sort of coercive example which you are presently giving. Specifically, whether you think that children indulging in consensual sex, which nobody is agreeing is right, and which a society would certainly want children to be protected from that. But I wanted to know if you thought that they should be deprived of this opportunity to participate in a child diversion program, and that the full weight of punishment should be inflicted on them.
No, absolutely not. That is not, that is essentially completely contrary to what we are proposing. We are actually saying that the child diversion program is essentially the most effective program for children that are engaged in sexual activities based on what, although there is no consent at this point in time, what we are addressing is that you have other advocates which have indicated that they should be able to consent by decriminalizing the offense, essentially, right? So we are simply saying, no, we do not.
No, but with respect though, miss, yeah. I don't think that because people or institutions or persons want to decriminalize the close in age, that they're encouraging consensual sex. No. What they're saying, if I understand them, and in fact is a report to Parliament, is that it is not in the child's best interest that they should be prosecuted and come before the court. No, your position is that prosecuting them will prevent more people from engaging in consensual sex with an underage girl, for example. But what I understand Jamaicans for Justice is saying, that the program now is overwhelmed because the majority of cases that come before child diversion is about consensual sex between minors, right? And many of them, as I understand it, may well have been charged and come into the formal justice system, when indeed child diversion is trying to keep them away from the child diversion, from the formal justice system. So bear in mind that we discussed this extensively about 10 years ago, just under 10 years, where it was proposed that the close-in age, where the female in particular is 16 and under, so that if the male was 19 and under, and it is consensual. Non-consensual sex is definitely criminal. But if it was consensual and it was close in age, it would be decriminalized. You're opposed to that, right? That's my understanding?
Yes, and no to some of what you mentioned before. When I say that, I'm going to address the first statement. So what we are proposing is not for the individual children, the minors, to be brought through the formal justice system. We are actually saying that the child diversion program is essentially effective, or if it is utilized in the manner that it was established, it would have been diverting them from the formal system. Aren't we correct on that? Aren't we on the same page with that?
Well, it works partially that way, because sometimes the officer may well charge the person, take them to court, though the officer can in fact refer the persons to child diversion. But that is, a matter that we need to look at.
Exactly. So, which is what we are saying, that maybe it is more from a administrative or implementation deficiency, but if it is that we are applying the law based on what it's supposed to be or what it was established for, the purpose for which it was established, then we would have our children diverted to the program without having to go through the formal proceedings.
No, the program, child diversion was not enacted to deal with consensual sex. It was enacted to deal generally, with offenses against
we
the
agree
criminal
on
law.
that. We agree on that.
Right.
Generally, but because this particular offense is also found to be one of the offenses in contempt of the law as well under the child diversion program, because it's mentioned in first schedule in the child.
Let me we can close this argument now by saying the 2017 report to Parliament recommended that close-in age consensual sex should be decriminalized, following, I think, a number of countries that have seen it fit, so that children who engage in non-consensual sex would not at any time have a criminal record. That was confirmed and supported. It's just that the legislation has taken so long for it to be enacted. So the likelihood is that close-in age consensual sex will be decriminalized. That's the likelihood. I know you're saying and there are many others who will oppose it because they feel the law should be used to reduce it. But it seems it's not reducing it. And so what I would like to ask you, there's no reason why in the amendment to the legislation, why one of the matters that can be referred by a police officer to the child diversion officer is the same, should we say, misbehavior of teenagers. You're with me? In other words, we could, even though it is decriminalized, we could still make it one of the areas where working with CPFSA, that these are matters if we have youngsters who are engaging in consensual sex and they're teenagers, we could still would have to amend the law to say it's not necessarily a criminal offense, but misconduct, misbehavior, or consensual sex under the age of 16, under the age of 17, that such persons can be referred to child diversion. If that was a substitute, you would have no argument.
We would not have any objection to it. The only thing I wanted to respond to, you mentioned that it's, and I heard the choir, so to speak, purporting that it has not reduced. One of the things we also want to remember, that even though you have misconduct, we want to see what are the legal ramifications, what are the consequences that flow from consensual sex, right? And what we find is sometimes persons tend to disregard the weight of which these consequences that flow. Even a child might be misbehave and do something, but when you have a number of children, minors, having consensual sex amongst themselves, one, you are still opening up yourself for teenage pregnancies, STIs. We are looking at an increase to the mental health of our children. And this is supported by data.
Anyway, let me not pursue this, but you wanted,
Mr. Chairman, I've had my hand up for quite some time. I know I'm not in the chamber.
But I have not been able to get you. How do you? Oh, I didn't see that. No, let me just, could you, Member Buchanan, then Senator Scott Motley, then you, Senator Campbell Golding. Go ahead.
Just two things.
Okay.
The decriminalization aspect of it doesn't take it away from child diversion. There's the first the first thing that we realize is that a policing is investigative thing catches people in the act. There is an age factor. It's not like a 13-year-old is going to say, me a 13, make me go on. It doesn't really work like that. What we're trying to do is take it out of the realm of the court and the formal justice system. So there's still accountability because there's an opportunity to intervene when you find persons incapable of having consenting to sex. There's still intervention where that is concerned. But the one thing I wanted to say to you is the constitutional framework and the Child Diversion Act. I have to address this, Ms. Priscilla. The House doesn't legislate for, it's not garrison legislation. We legislate for all children, so you never know where they are, and so once they are in conflict with the law, we have to divert. So we can't legislate just thinking about the garrison. And a child in Canada or in the UK, they breathe the same air as the ones here in Jamaica, and we just have to try to keep that. The same UN convention that applies to children all over the world, we have to treat Jamaican children exactly like that and take them wherever we find them and treat them as children. I just want to, if you can appreciate that, it seems a little bit problematic when we start to go into certain areas in Jamaica and say the children are somehow different.
No, absolutely not. I acknowledge and appreciate that wholeheartedly, and it was never our intention even to focus so much on coercion and the garrison. It wasn't our intention. I was just giving some background as to what other supporters and what other researchers have indicated and why we have this particular, as well, a particular view. So I didn't want to take that point.
Senator Scott Motley.
I really wanted to ask, you said in your overview, in your presentation, where you made the key points, you said that Dr. Herbert Gales from UIMONA, the research indicates that 44% of persons have an early sexual encounter, which means not all our children are engaged in sexual activity. But this is as the law presently exists. Would you say then that the law as it presently exists is actually having the effect of deterring persons from having sex because, as you elaborate further, they know that they will have a criminal offense? Is it justified for you to have that view, that it has a deterrent effect?
All right, so two things I'm going to use to answer that question. Number one, I would say yes, maybe not all our children are going to be deterred, but if you notice the number is still lower in terms of 44% is less than, it's still lower. So what it means, and the second thing I'm going to say regarding that, and this is our, it's lower than the amount that are not having sex at an early age. So 44% are deemed to have an early sexual encounter. So the next part of the next answer to that, though, is, I got a little distracted, is that when you look at deterrence, what we are saying is one shoe doesn't fit all. Just like we have said it before, you have more, I don't know how many children you might have, if any, but you don't treat or discipline or punish or hold them accountable the same way. Some may need gentle parenting and some may need a spanking. So this is how we look at it from that standpoint. In addition to that, we are also looking at it from the standpoint, lots of persons are breaking the stoplight, breaking the law on a daily basis. How do we treat with that? Are we also going to say remove the stoplight, change the law to facilitate everybody going through it, so might as well, or it's not deterring them, so why not? That is our position. The law is there for a purpose. It may deter some, it may not. And we are also in agreement with social intervention strategies. We are fully supportive of that. So this is why we are not against the child diversion program. We are not against any other alternative strategies, counseling. We know and we agree that these are ways in which we can address the matter.
All right, you wanted to...
I'm just confused. I'm just confused. I lack clarity. Perhaps my fault. But I'm not knowing what is it you're opposed to then?
What we are opposed to is the decriminalization of the consensual sex among minors.
But let me ask Senator Golden, Campbell Golden. You want to ask your question? No.
Sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
I'd promised Senator Campbell Golden to make her.
It's the other way around, Minister Chuck. Golden fathered me and Campbell married me.
Please go ahead.
Minister Chuck, thank you very much, Chairman. And I do apologize for coming in late. I think I missed some of what Member Buchanan had said on his first go around as I was trying to navigate getting into the meeting. But I want to pick up, and I think the point at which Senator Scott Motley yielded a while ago is a good place, because I too am a little confused. And I'm now understanding that the central point of Hear the Children Cry is this question of the decriminalization of the Section 10 of the Sexual Offences Act. I'm not quite so sure that this committee is the best place to argue that, but be that as it may, I want to go back to some of what I heard earlier, and the reference was made to this question of, or to the concept that the Child Diversion Act is supposed to be an act that deals with the rehabilitation of children, and I can't remember some of the other language that was used, but the way the comment was framed had my attention, and I went back to look very quickly at the objects of the act, and I think the framing of the act as an act intending to offer rehabilitation to children might provide a point at which I'm departing from Hear the Children Cry, and perhaps what I think is at the source of what I'm hearing to be maybe not agreeing about the purposes of the Child Diversion Act. The objects of the Child Diversion Act under Section 3 are to ensure that every child in conflict with the law is treated in a manner that recognizes and upholds human dignity and worth, diverts the child from engaging in deviant and delinquent behavior, and instills in the child respect for the fundamental rights and freedoms of others, taking into consideration, and it lists the three things. So that preamble is what sets the fundament of the objects of the act. But in those objects take into consideration the best interests of the child, as was said earlier, and this is where it is, the desirability of the child's rehabilitation, reintegration, and assumption of a constructive role in society, and restorative justice proceedings, etc., etc. But the fundament of the act is not rehabilitation, not child rehabilitation. The fundament of the act, as I understand it, and I stand to be corrected, is a program that removes children from a formal system that would otherwise land them in some sort of custodial or fine situation, and allows them to have the benefit of a program that basically re-engineers their thinking and redirects them in a more appropriate path. So I think if you think of this as a rehabilitative act, that you then, in conjunction with your look at the Section 10 offense under the Sexual Offences Act, you would likely speak in terms that I'm hearing and which concern me very much as a legislator. I will repeat in every single committee meeting, Chairman, that the legislative intent at the time the Sexual Offences Act was brought into being was not to criminalize consensual, quote-unquote, sex between minors. And I've already said my piece in previous meetings about what that position is grounded on. However, I want to ask the presenters in relation to the comments that they made, and I think Senator Scott Motley might have begun to go there, but let me ask it in this way. If there were not a Child Diversion Act, if there was no child diversion program, is it that the group would be okay with, supportive of a Section 10 offender being put through the criminal justice process and possibly convicted and put into custodial arrangements, whether that be in a juvenile detention center or whatever the facilities are for persons under 16? That's my first question. The other thing I want to comment on, when it was brought to us that we are not necessarily looking at the consequences of consensual sex between minors, and I believe teenage pregnancy and mental health issues were raised as some of the consequences that flow from that. And again, I want to say, not every piece of legislation can fix every problem. And so some of the issues that I hear coming from Hear the Children's Cry are indeed issues. And we agree that there are matters that need national response, societal response, and perhaps even legislative response. But I do not think that the consequences that flow from consensual sex between minors are what ought to ground our decision to have it remain as a criminal offense under the Sexual Offences Act. Good. That the two don't connect to me.
Good. I think
you can deal with the consequences without it being a criminal offense.
Right. Let me just ask before you have made a presentation, and so far, as far as you're concerned, the Child Diversion Act is okay. You have not seen any improvements that can be made to it, or your main concern in coming here is to advocate that we should not decriminalize consensual sex. Is that so? Huh? Is that the main concern?
Yes, the main concern would be.
All right, but I think Senator Campbell has made a very good question to you. Has posed a very good question to you. Suppose the Child Diversion Act did not exist. Would you support criminalizing consensual sex?
All right, thank you. I also thought it was a good question, but the thing is, The Child Diversion Act wasn't always around, and so that is already established. Now, the question, the answer to the question, so to speak, though, is that what we have in mind about the criminalization of this offense is for deterring purposes, ideally. And so if there aren't any legislation, policy framework in place as an alternative until then we have to work accordingly.
But let me just
I'm sorry, Minister. I'm sorry, Chair. Could you just ask her to repeat the last part of that? If there's any legislation that what?
If there aren't any legislation in place, which would be the Child Diversion Act, then what else would we do? We would of course support that it continues on that path for the purpose of deterrence.
You didn't think that the closing age recommendation of decriminalizing was a good idea? Bear in mind, Senator Campbell is making the point, criminalizing consensual sex was never intended in the legislation, but somehow it got through. But the idea when...
Chairman, before Mr. Haney answers that last question, can I just offer this? Because remember Buchanan, I think it was, who said something about the police who catch young people in the act. And I haven't practiced at the criminal bar for a very long time, but I did at the time deal with matters like this under the Sexual Offences Act, the Section 10 offense. And while this is not specifically a child diversion matter, I just want to share. In my experience, it didn't happen by police catching young people in the act. How it happened was that young people would be caught by a parent or community member or older person near the house or something like that, or even a teacher, and then it was reported. And it was reported in a situation in which both the young girl and the young boy were quite often shrouded in shame. And that shame continued all the way up to the police got involved. There was report to the police, statements given. And in those days when there was no Child Diversion Act, I certainly have the experience of having a young 15-year-old girl being sent to Horizon and the young 15-year-old boy being locked up in the Spanish Town lockup for 2-3 nights. That's what used to happen. And I'm going against the grain of my argument, which is to say that I don't think that this argument properly belongs in the Child Diversion Act Joint Select Committee. But just to say to Mr. Haney that the concept of criminalizing minors for acts, we are saying they're minors and they don't have the ability to consent. In law, that's what we say. Well, equally, they don't have the ability to consent. They may also not have the ability to restrain themselves from a physical and physiological feeling that takes them in a particular direction. The answer to that cannot be to put them before the courts. Ought not be to put them before the courts.
Minister Cuthbert.
Thank you. I came late, but my mic is on. I came late, but I was listening online, and I think you had mentioned certain communities, and what I want to reinforce is why we're stuck on the consensual sex, because the child diversion is not just for that. It's for children, getting in trouble with, minor crimes, and making sure that we're not criminalizing them, putting them in the penal system. And, when I have great issues with the argument when we're talking about deterrent, trying to deter, 12, 13, 14, 15 young minds, young children, to not have sex with their peers, with this close in age, and not because you want to prevent teenage pregnancy I think you mentioned to use it as a deterrent, not looking at other factors. I can't within myself want to criminalize those young people when there may be other influences in their communities, the situation that they may have grown up in, to see things that they possibly should not see and not understanding. And then on top of all of that, with all of those possibly various traumas around them, we want to then criminalize and put them in a penal system because they themselves would not even have understood what was happening and why.
And Minister it has a long-term consequences.
Long-term consequences for these young people.
I can tell you there are many of these youngsters who had consensual sex, they call it carnal abuse, that are now up for expungement, and it is not expungible, and they are living straightforward life. I give you one good example. There was a case where this couple, this boy, I think he was about 18, had intercourse with a girl. She might have been 15 or under. It was consensual. He was charged, and he was sentenced to 3 years probation. After the probation, they got married. And they had children who are living abroad. The children are now in their 20s and early 30s. The mother can visit them, but the father can't. And I must tell you, it's one of these letters where the mother wrote me, I think, 6-page letter about the relationship and how, can you imagine, they have been living together as man and wife for 20-odd years? More than 20, 30-odd years. And the children are living abroad, and she's the only one who can visit. Now you will understand the long-term consequence of criminalizing consensual sex. And that is why I must say, Ms. Duane, and hear the children's cry.
What is the reasoning, though?
I don't think, if I might just, I don't think when we heard, this argument is really not for this committee.
Right.
Because we heard it at the Joint Select Committee already. That we are going, the recommendation to Parliament is to decriminalize consensual sex between teenagers and close in age. What I hope you would have done, and what we would want to hear, is if we decriminalize consensual sex, how best could the child diversion assist what is deemed moral misconduct? So I think, I'm sorry to let Ms. Cuthbert, you okay? Okay, go ahead.
But Mr. Chair, if we go down the road of decriminalization, then what is the basis for intervention?
Well, remember we were looking at the possibility.
If it's not a criminal act, how do you?
No,
how do you govern that?
I think the idea was.
I mean, who will report to youngsters if it is now decriminalized? I mean, the neighbor would no longer have any reason to report it. The police will have no reason to sanction it. What would be the basis?
I think the idea was we were looking, just examining the possibility that delinquent behavior, we are going to work with this CPFSA, could be referred to child diversion.
Yeah, and perhaps that is why there has to be some retention of sanction in order to trigger that program of, diversion management, counseling. How do you intervene? The fact of the matter, if we decriminalize, then what is the channel? What is the opportunity for intervention? How do we trigger that? That's a big question.
And you will recall,
although I am of the view that that is for another forum. I thought, the whole idea of the closing age decriminalization.
No, let me say this, Member Williams. There's no doubt that if it is decriminalized, matter like this should be with the CFSA.
Okay.
And that is why I was very keen on hearing Jamaicans of Justice. Where do you draw the balance? are there some offenses which CFSA could refer to child diversion? You know, in other words, the balance, so because the law as it presently stands, that child diversion is only referred where there's a breach of the criminal law. So the question arises whether there could be a gray area where delinquent behavior, identifiable delinquent behavior, could be referred to child diversion. And that is something we're hoping we can examine at a later time, okay? Sorry, no, you're finished, Member Cuthbert. Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, the lines are so blurred. I just need clarity from anybody in this room. Decriminalization doesn't mean that the act is still not a crime. So it's just the removal of the sanction. But why I say the lines are blurred is because we're interfacing with minors who are having sex with each other. That oftentimes it may very well be rape. We're talking consensual. I know, but I'm saying the lines are always blurred because there are persons who, the same pressure that we're talking about, young girls, when are caught and they're shamed, as Senator Campbell Golden, without Golden Campbell, would have said that, you know, because of the embarrassment, there is a need for one person to get up and say, I was pressured. And it is not until you're in a diversion program where a judge says the usual, go to restorative justice, but go to diversion and let us investigate the matter that we start to it starts to unfold. So I'm a bit concerned with how we say child diversion wouldn't apply.
This is a matter, Member Buchanan, that the committee need to address.
That's what I wanted to say, so because when I say a police finds you, it's appreciated that it is the police who has the authority to divert. So whether somebody complains...
Make a note of it. That
I have made it, but
that grey area
it's a gray
something
area
that
has
we
to be
need
addressed.
to look at, okay?
Very well.
Yes, you wanted to respond and maybe finish up because...
Yes. Most definitely. So I wanted to respond. I think it's Senator Golden Campbell had asked a question, the second question, that the consequences, she's not seeing where the consequences grown the need for it to be a criminal offense. Well, I can only say that whilst we might have difficulty in appreciating the consequences as being grave enough to ground it as criminal, the reality is when we look at other offenses, they might not even have those same consequences. The consequences are really grave, and those it may not seem important in the moment, but from a wider scale, wider perspective, we have to take that into account. We oftentimes make reference to teenage pregnancies and STIs and affecting the healthcare. But what about increasing abortions? Because what about your mental health? A lot of children or minors that are participating in these activities, they are not even in a position to attend school after a while because they are so caught up with these particular experiences. We also see research is saying that nowadays you have more minors participating and having multiple partners at this point in time. What I have a problem with, if you decriminalize, you're taking away the powers of the parents of others to bring this as a major concern.
No, to be frank with you, this is not the committee that should address it. No, but let me just emphasize. When I chaired that committee of the Joint Select Committee that recommended that consensual sex and close-in-age sex should be decriminalized. The feeling was that there are other social units, the parents, the school, the churches, the neighborhood, who are better equipped, at least generally, to deal with what is considered moral misconduct. But to criminalize such conduct at the time create graver dangers and consequence than the deterrent effect that most people say it imposes. In other words, and I give you one example, and there are many other examples, where in criminalizing it, youngsters have been put through a process which, should I say, violate their human dignity more than the deterrent effect of what it was supposed to do. So it's a matter that Parliamentary will have the opportunity at a later date to examine again when we bring the legislation. But I think at the time, the feeling was you criminalizing consensual sex between teenagers or close in age was damaging. And that is why it was recommended. Okay? I want to thank you, Ms. Duane and Ms. Witte, for... Sure.
Ms. Duhaney might be too young to remember this, but there was once a program which said two was better than too many.
Yes, I know that.
We don't forget it. I mean, you still have people making reference to it to say two is better than too many. It was so effective in my view, and the view of those who have done research, that right now people are thinking about how you can incentivize people having children. I would submit to you that if we focused on a program like that, because what we want to do is to prevent young people from really having sex too early, sex before they are mature enough to be able to accept the consequences and the responsibility. And I would like to submit to you that perhaps we need to look at deterrence in a different way rather than criminalization.
I want
using the law. Sorry,
just
you want to
wrap
respond
up,
to that?
Yes, I just want to say, in no way, shape, and form am I in disagreement with you. We absolutely agree on that. What we have always said as well is that the deficiency is not necessarily in the law, though. Why not use these other strategies that we have? We believe public education campaigns are necessary. Parenting support, disrupting poor parenting strategies, and also providing support through the churches. So we are in agreement on that. We believe in social intervention strategy. We just did not believe that there is
I am so glad Member Scott Motley made that point, because that is exactly what the ministry is doing with child diversion. What we are saying is they are putting out the public programs, we are helping, but if you still have this criminal effect that's over their heads, it almost negates it, because when you start and you're trying, they say, but if we make a mistake, bam, we go on to something. And it goes right back to exactly why the ministry is looking at helping with programs and attitude rather than going to criminalize at an early age.
I just wanted
and when you criminalize, and remember, you have the police, you have all sorts of areas of the law, and once it's there as a criminal effect, you can't stop them from grabbing up a child and pushing them into a system, and you still go before a court, and I say doctors differ, patients die. When you go into a courtroom, you have different persons with different perspectives, different attitudes. And what we're trying to do is save children from being exposed to something that is going to be so harmful that it destroys them. Having sex at an early age, there are consequences to it, but it certainly is not going to destroy that child's mind, that when you grab up a child and lock her up in a home and there is no guidance or nothing, and you feel yourself you're a criminal and you're condemned. And everybody in the district, I'm telling you, because I work in an area where we are rural, and as soon as that happens, the word goes through. You hear them lock up so-and-so, him up a station, him have this, that, and it runs through the school system. So really,
all right,
this is what.
Thank you, Minister.
Just to say, though, and maybe this is directed to you, Chairman, I hear mention of the 2-year age, closing age, which is 15 to 17. But what we were also mindful of was that other advocates, and I believe even you made reference to 4-year age gap, closing age.
The recommendation was 4. In other words, a boy age 19 and a girl age 15, it would be decriminalized. At the moment, you must bear in mind as an attorney that if a boy under the age of 23, if they convince the court and the jury that they believe the child was over 16, it's a good defense. You know that?
Yes, yes, Chair. However, that is the risk that we run with having 4-year age gap. You're looking at an adult to a minor, so it takes it now out of the realm of even talking about consensual minors. Closing age.
Non-consensual is definitely criminal.
No, we're not talking about non-consensual. We're talking about consensual. But this is the problem. It can create the issue of peer pressure, coercion,
as I said, this is not the right forum. I want to thank you here at Children Cry for being here.
Thank you.
All right, all the best.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we have another presentation which is coming from a mentor. She's here. We're not going to call her name to protect the children that she has mentored. She's a justice of the peace from one of the parishes. We're not even going to call the parish. And she's going to give us her experience of mentoring. She's on her 10th. And I publicly would like to thank her as a justice of the peace and has mentored 10, 8 successfully, 1 still being mentored, and 1 did not conform, and she had to return 1 back to the court. So we'll just ask her to make a presentation, and then you can ask her any question you would like, okay? So we just call her
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming that you will not allow her to be shown on camera then.
No, it's not a problem. The mentor can be, but we're not going to identify any of the children she has mentored. And that is why I'm not calling her name or the parish that she's from.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Joint Select Committee, other members present. I must say, first and foremostly, I was asked at the 13th hour literally to be here today. I'm on edge, I'm nervous, so please bear with me. Okay, so...
You're in friendly company, you don't have to worry.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, so as was indicated, in addition to being a Justice of the Peace and a National Child Diversion Program mentor, I'm also a trained and practicing restorative justice facilitator, and I'm a social worker by profession. So I have been doing the Child Diversion Mentorship Program for more than 5 years. I would have been asked to mentor both young men and young women who would have run afoul of the law, from minor offenses to include the one that is currently being discussed, which is of a sexual nature. I would indicate that the most successful one I would say that I have to date is the one that I'm actually currently doing. It involves a young man who is quite open and receptive to mentorship. I remember speaking with him. Normally when I speak with mentors, or mentees I should say, most of them I would meet them face to face in the presence of their guardians, and we'll go through the necessary processes of they knowing me knowing them, and how it is that the mentorship agreement is going to operate. One of the things that I do as a mentor is that I don't just simply uphold the weekly conversations with them. I give them activities to do as well. I also encourage them to journal their experiences with me, not just as part of their development, but for them to see where they had started, where they are now, and if at the end of the mentorship agreement, if they have made any progress. So one of the main things I tend to do is to ask them, what are your expectations of me as a mentor? Equally, I tell them what my expectations are of them as a mentee. We try to come to an agreement as to how it is that our agreements will run. So I try to empower them, give them a degree of self-determination to dictate terms as best as possible to make them feel as if they're in control of how it is that our agreement is going to run, to primarily garner trust. I mean, you're going to be exposing yourself to a total stranger. So I have to get that level of trust from them, and from there, we decide how often we're going to have our conversations, how it is that my activities are going to be done, give them deadlines, and in addition to that, we cover other topics, not just related to why it is that you would have run afoul of the law, but what are your goals? What are your plans? What is it that you see as a challenge now to get to where you need to be? And how is it that you can improve your thinking and behavior, as well as your values and attitudes to make a more upstanding citizen? So the mentorship agreement can run anywhere from a few months to up to a year. I would have done a few that would have run up to a year. I would have had a mentee who, even after the program had ended, we still maintained some level of communication. She will still check in with me. I will still check in with her to see how she's doing, because she's all grown now. But she would say to me that she remembers all that help that I would have given her, especially when she was going through a difficult period in her life. So I would have seen the benefits of not just mentoring these young people, learning from them, but also feeling empowered to know that they're also learning from me. I am a bit of what some people say a renegade of sorts. So when they just meet me, they're like, wow, you're a JP? Wow, you are this? Wow, you're that. I don't know what they're expecting, but when they meet me and they recognize I'm just a regular person, I would have a lot of what you call lived experiences. So it's easy for us to relate to each other. And once you get that trust, whether it's male or female, you find that they will open up to you, because even with the activities that I would give them, sometimes they give me things that I don't ask for, but I will recognize that where they are now, it's based on a lot of previous experiences they would have been exposed to. So while the child diversion program would offer them counseling, it will offer them other psychosocial support. Sometimes you will recognize, even with written or unwritten communication, you know this is not just going to be a normal mentorship experience. Maybe they'll need some additional trauma counseling or grief counseling. Maybe they'll need some additional career development conversations. Maybe expose them to more lived experiences. I remember having a mentee. I just took her to the airport. She had never been to the airport. And I remember her standing and crying and thinking to herself, I have never been to the airport before, and I live in a particular parish. And I said to her, look, anything that you want to be, anywhere that you want to go, the power is in your hands. And that same person has taken more flights than me, to my knowledge right now. And she always tells people that, look,
that's fantastic.
She's the person that showed me what the airport looked like, and I aspired that I wanted to do something in my life where I'm going to be able to travel and see the world, not just the confines of my community. So for me, the program has been quite wholesome. Yes, there are challenges. I remember that one mentee that I did try with. I always try my best. But the young man was putting up a lot of resistance. And you would think that the support system that he had would maybe be a bit more encouraging to say, listen, This is an opportunity for you to have a clean slate, to start your life afresh, work with the person. But sadly, I recognize that the socialized made it very difficult for him to even comprehend what the program was going to be about. I would have made several attempts to reach out to the parish officer, indicate all the measures that I would have taken for intervention, but even in the helping profession, we recognize that there are times when certain things are above our control and we have to revert the matter. So I did that, and I must say, even when I did it, I had a heavy heart when I did it. I felt like I failed. I really felt like I failed, but I had to tell myself that you're not going to win all the lives over that you seek to touch, and you can only hope that they can find an alternate measure that the person will be able to benefit from, so they do not wind up not just going further down the rabbit hole, but maybe no longer being a positive person in society or knowing the positive that they can bring to society. So over the years, I would have also sought to encourage other persons to become mentors. Because again, I would have seen the benefits of being able to engage young lives, see some change occur, and to be able to know that I was a part of the process. I am happy to say that there are several colleagues who have now gone on to become successful mentors as well. And I always talk about the importance of volunteerism, especially through the child diversion program, whenever I do any type of volunteer activities in my outreach programs. So I'm not quite sure if there's anything that you need from me.
First of all, colleagues, this is sort of heroes we have in our society. I spoke to her for the first time today. But when she spoke to me and and told me her story, I think I mentioned at the first meeting, we want some, because I've heard many stories like her about the benefit of mentoring and the satisfaction that people have got from mentoring. And we have pushed it amongst the JPs. And the truth is that we have a lot of JPs who are engaged in mentoring. And when you hear some of the stories, just like this present mentor has indicated, and I don't mind if you can think of one or two of the successes, how, without, as confidential as possible, that when they, because one or two, as I understand it, you report back to the court. Yes. She sends written reports back to the court. And you have persons who are engaged in volunteerism like this, who, as I say, are real heroes in this society. And to see a number of these kids who, as she said, one of the girls actually keeps in touch, yes, which means that a good relationship developed. And I think I mentioned about a couple of JPs from Hanover who spoke and told me how many of the mentees have kept in touch. I told you quite a few of these stories, and it is so pleasant to hear you, but I don't mind if any member would like to ask any question of her. If not, if you can think of one story where why you felt the person has completed the program successfully. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
Because when the minister was telling us what to expect, the person who was returned,
yes,
were there any peculiar and different challenges? Was it related to the individual or to his environment?
Thank you so much for the question. As a social worker, I struggle between maintaining certain hats that I would wear. So the social worker in me would want to do the home visits, do the community visits, the school visits. But because there are certain parameters that you have to be bound by with the program, I have to work with the information that I would have received from the child diversion office, as well as the information given to me by the prospective mentee as well as their guardian. But even in interacting with the young man at the time, I recognized that there was a lot of maladaptive behaviors that he was displaying at the time. First and foremost, I recognized that he was in a room full of women, and he was not minded to, quote unquote, take any talk from any of us. Even with his grandmother, I recognized that given her capacity, she was up in age, and he would have been maybe in second or third form at the time. You know, the age disparity, and even how he spoke with her, I recognized that she was having a challenge trying to be his primary caregiver. I tried everything that I could to engage him, ask him questions in terms of if he had a male figure in his life, and he came from a very violent background. And there was a lot of distrust. And in recognizing that, I saw that the fault didn't lie completely with him not wanting to be receptive to the program. It's just that based on the interactions with him, right down to the judge was a female judge. Everyone was just female dominated, and he was just putting up a lot of resistance. So I had to even say to the parish officer, was the counselor even a female? And she laughed, because I recognized he did not have an opportunity any at all to interface with any positive male influence. And that is why a lot of times when I even speak to fellow JPs, I encourage the men, offer yourself up as mentors, because a lot of times, a lot of us as women, we mean well, but there is a specific place sometimes for male mentors, that positive influence, that handoff, quiet discipline, if you will. We mean well as women, but a lot of times, a lot going on with these young people. We are just not being heard when we speak to them, because, again, they would have had so much negative interactions, troubled past that would involve certain things that they just can't come to terms with, because all they're seeing in front of them is just another woman.
Wow. Member Buchanan.
Yes. Oh, follow.
Right.
Because I want to thank
Yeah.
you for that explanation.
Sure.
It is extremely helpful, even more helpful than the positive stories you have shared. Because
Thank you.
it points us into a direction that we know we have to address some of these issues. And, you know, incidentally, I noticed that some of the schools where the performance is exceptional, they have male principals, and we really do need that influence. And then I want to thank you, just thank you for the amazing work which you do. I tell you, it is highly appreciated, because it's so important that we put our young people on the path of progress, and so they can take enough plane rides.
Thank you so
very
much for that.
Thank you, Senator Scott Montley. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam, I just want to say that the information that you have just shared has opened up a can of worms, and the chairman would shut me down. So let me just be very guided. Okay. I want to say, in your experience, did you find that the offense was determinative of the success? That's the first question.
I'm just thinking back as far back as I can to the many persons that I would have mentored. And it's a mixture, because on one hand, as I said, I would have gotten from uncontrollable behavior all the way up to wounding, all the way to sexual offense related. And again, I've always remembered saying to the parish officers, I won't shy away from the difficult or the complex matters. I won't shy away from the ones that seem to feel like they have no way out, or you may have to send them back to the courts. Let me try with them first. Because again, I remember what it was like growing up. I remember getting a lot of guidance along the way. I was no saint or paragon of virtue, but certainly mentorship, even right now as an adult, still remains important to me. And sometimes when I see them, and that is why it is so important to have that face-to-face interaction with them, not just in the presence of the parents and the guardian, but one-on-one as well. They open up to you to the point where sometimes they will share the why. And I mean, again, I am more concerned with, yes, doing the mentorship part of the program, but I also am concerned about their overall well-being. And sometimes when you hear the why, you recognize, okay, there's going to be so much more that I'm going to have to do with them. Sometimes even the time frame that you get to work with them may not suffice. But one good thing about the program is that if they're able to, they will give you that amount of latitude just to ensure that whatever you're doing with them doesn't just stop, full stop at the point of intervention to say we're going back to the courts or we're going back to the police station. It is something that I can walk away knowing that even after the matter has ended, they can still have some continuity in their lives with the hope that they will not reoffend. Some of them, they're honest and say, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm not going to make it because based again on the environment that they're in, it's not easy for them to relocate. It's not easy for them to change their circumstances or the persons or their support systems. So there are times when I will say to the child diversion officer, what other intervention programs are in place for this person? Is the parent or the guardian getting any support? Are they getting any community outreach discussions where we, as restorative justice facilitators, child diversion persons, JPs, and other persons can come into this space and talk to them about the importance of mentorship, offering support, and proper parenting and guidance. So all of these things, I think, over the years would have helped to steer them on a path that only they can maintain because, again, self-determination at the end of the day lies with them. Yes, they know that if they stick to the program, they more than likely will avoid getting a criminal record. And you have to sell them the idea sometimes of why it's important not to have the criminal record. You don't have to go through all that problem with expungement. You may want to travel. Certain jobs will need a police record.
Okay.
So all of these things I try to encourage is sell them to stick with the program and make it meaningful to them.
Thank you. My final
One more
point,
and then after that.
my final point.
Members.
You said something profound. You spoke about the lived experience.
Yes, sir.
It is something that is to be defined. Mm-hmm. If you can, I would ask you to do that. But in a case where I think I can throw out that males are marginalized in the justice system.
In the justice system or generally?
No, in the justice system. When they interface with the justice system, female judges, the court reporters, social, lawyers, prosecutors, across. Sometimes, is it a case where, in your experience, especially when you're telling male JPs that they should participate in the program, is it ever in your recommendation that you just simply tell a judge who might happen to be a female that this little boy, him just really need some male intervention that would cause, maybe there will be a shift in his attitude, and the success of the program will be determined on the mentor, as in somebody that they can see themselves in. I'm just wondering yes.
Well, one of the good things with my parish officer, they're always open to feedback from us as mentors. So once I notice certain things, I'll always put it in my report because there is an avenue for recommendations, observations, etc. And again, given the types of persons that I would have been given, they recognize that the first thing they tend to ask me is there anything that we need to look out for? Is there anything you think that can improve upon the outcome for this young person? So that is one good thing about the program that I have found in terms of they welcome the recommendations and the feedback from us. Again, even with the the mentorship, especially from the male perspective, most of my life's work has been dedicated to working with men or working with boys. So over the years, again, the lived experience in terms of interacting with them across different spheres has given me the opportunity to provide the different types of recommendations and look out for certain things, because again, how men and women interact with each other is important. And just from the get-go, that's why I always say it's important to meet them face to face. This is the person who's going to be mentoring you for this period of time. Do you have a problem with me? Do you have a problem that I'm a woman? I get all that out the way. If they say they have a challenge, I try to find out what is the challenge and if we can work around it. At the end of the day, if they prefer a male mentor, they believe they'll get more value through a male mentor, I have to respect their wishes, because again, at the end of the day, it is all about their development. And that is something that I'm always open to as a mentor, because again, it's a win-win either way. So if it is not through my hands, someone else's hands, I'm always happy for the outcome.
Thank you. Member Smith, then Hamilton.
Thank you, Chairman. A quick question. I too want to thank the mentor for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
For the amazing work that you're doing.
But
I have a question, Chairman, against the background of the presentation today by Hear the Children's Cry. And our mentor was here through all of it. I'd like to have an understanding of how many persons that you have mentored over the years. How many times have you encountered, what the percentage you'd say, of persons that you have mentored who have come before you because of consensual sex among minors? And two, you're here for the presentation, and you've been in the system for some time.
Yes, sir.
So I would be interested to know what is your opinion on the decriminalization of sex or sexual offenses with minors?
Okay, so my current mentee his offense is a sexual related one. And I would have dealt with approximately 2 others. One was a female. And that is why when I'm talking about topics, it's not just the weekly phone calls and checking in. I try to give them that journaling experience that we would have learned through social work in terms of recognizing things like their thinking and behavior. And I remember it's interesting, last week we looked at male-female relations, how he relates with the women in his household versus persons in authority versus persons that he has an interest in romantically. And I asked him to give me an exercise thinking back on all that we spoke about, and if it is that his posture remains the same in terms of would he have done things any differently, or if no, that having had that opportunity for us to go through the process of why he's now before the law and it's possibly being a life-changing thing for him, has he learned anything? And I remember one activity he mentioned that at first he laid blame on the female because she knew that she was underage and she lied. But then he said upon reflection, he recognized that he also had a role to play because he should have done more. The signs were there and he totally just disregarded that because there was a psychological or physiological need. But now that he is reflecting, he recognized that he's thankful that the intervention came in a timely manner, because if things had persisted or prolonged, it might have been more serious. So he was actually thanking the child diversion program for giving him an opportunity to have a fresh start. He has a lot of things in mind that he wants to do with his life. He even mentioned the plans that he wants for the young lady to achieve as well. So he wasn't bitter towards her. he was actually hopeful that she could also learn from the experience and to make better her life as well. So certainly for sexual offense matters, I recognize that while children do not have the legal right to consent, we recognize that the times that we're living in, we have to now think more proactive rather than reactive at times. I remember when I was doing my social work degree, I did my practicum at a particular high school, and I was asked to assist with just checking the bags. And I remember checking the bags, I saw anything from condoms, pregnancy kits, you name it, I saw it. And I remember there was one particular young lady when I called her aside and I asked her about the contents of her bag. She said I was the first person to actually ask her that question because all the signs was there in her household and no one cared. No one cared to ask. So again, it is important for us to, as policymakers and lawmakers, to recognize the environment and the times that we are in, and to ensure that we are doing justice, not just to ensure that we divert and we prevent and we deter, but we have that rehabilitative component as well. So at the end of the day, some of these same persons who came so close to having their lives destroyed can now turn around and become positive influence to others.
Member Hamilton? No. Oh. You don't have to, you don't have to enforce it.
I will
but
remain silent in the matter, please, and thank you, and just watch. Thank you.
Okay. Member Hamilton.
Chair, I listened to your presentation, what you had to say in relation to all these young persons that you've mentored. What stood out to me is that one that you said got away. And I was wondering, I know our society is not one that prides itself on mental health intervention, but from your perspective, do you think having that mental health intervention could have played a greater role with that child?
Definitely, because again, these young people, they're at a particular stage in their development where they're trying to find their identity. And children live what they learn and they learn what they live. And we're living in a globalized time, a highly advanced technological time, where back in the day, some of us might have had to hide and peek at the little pop-ups or the open stuff. Now everything is just thrown on tarpaulin and it is just there, easily accessible. So for a lot of them, they're going through other stressors. A lot of them are also using or possibly misusing substances. Not just to cope, but sometimes peer pressure again. For some of them, their socialization, they're struggling with what is right from wrong. You go to school and you hear that this is wrong. You go back into your community and hear this is right. And they're struggling to find that middle ground as to what is wrong, what is right, where do I fit in. And another thing that we tend to not recognize or to accept, depression is a form of mental disorder. And a lot of our young people are going through depression. They are stressed out at school, they're not performing how it is that they're expected to perform. They are pressured because of community and personal expectations, and some of them have mental health traits in their families, and some are underlying in them, and because they are undergoing a lot in their daily lives, they are now facing that possibility that the stressors is now, as they say, flick a switch. So again, in analyzing or assessing the cases, that component to treat with any potential mental health challenge, including depression, we have to treat with that, because a lot of people do not believe that depression can also exacerbate a situation and create that type of negative mental block that they don't want to accept anything that is readily being given to them.
Colleagues, I would like us to thank the mentor. I must admit, I begged Ms. Clark to bring one of the mentors we have been promising, and I am so happy that you came. Very happy that you came. I know, although she's a GP, I don't know if I've met her, interacted with her elsewhere, but it's the first time I think I'm speaking to her today. And believe me, you didn't have to be nervous, and you came across extremely well. And it is persons like you who can make Jamaica a better place, because you have reached out to our youngsters, you have assisted them greatly, and you're the sort of person who is the sort of ideal example of a mentor that we're trying to get more. And I know you're assisting in getting more mentors. Believe me, if I can get a few who have met similar to come and give us their experience, it is heartwarming, and we have golden hearts like you all around the country that should be rewarded on National Heroes Day. Not with a badge of honor, and it is something that I'm going to make sure happens to persons like you, mentor, who have made life better for some of our youngsters. And these are the things. It's not only saving the persons who are drowning, and those are acts of bravery, but saving lives and pointing children in the right direction. So I want the public to thank you, and I'm going to keep in touch with you. So I hope many of the GPs who might be listening, and maybe on an occasion, Venetia, we get her to come and speak to the GP sensitization to encourage more of them to become mentors. And we have others who can speak, because people like these make lives better. And the men, and as you quite rightly say, we need some more men. Colleagues, it was a good evening. So I want to thank my colleagues for being here, all the persons who have been here, including Hear the Children Cry, members from the Ministry of Justice, Law Reform, Attorney General's Chambers, everyone. Thanks for having been here with us. We meet next week, Wednesday. We are going to hear from the Ministry of Education at 2 o'clock. And if the opportunity arises, I'll ask Venetia to check if we can get another mentor to come and share the story again. Thanks again, everybody. Sorry? Before available to you this morning, because I know they were working on it. So I indicated that on Wednesday next week we are going to, the 24th and the 26th, the 26th should shortly be here. We want to confirm the 24th and the 26th. And then the 3rd we do another time, okay? Thanks everyone for being here.
We want you to enjoy.
Hey, I'm Abijah, the Roots Man. Today, I want to talk to you about something powerful. Peace. Peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's about kindness, understanding.